House Bill 175 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just like to make a few comments about this bill. This gives the student member of the Baltimore County School Board the ability to vote on a budget of, say, $2.6 billion. Let me tell you what someone who is under 18 cannot do, because most of the students who are great kids, they do a good job, they bring a perspective of students to the board, but voting on the budget is a step too far, because these students can't open up a checking account. They can't open a bank account. They can't get a credit card. They can't take a loan out. They cannot join the military. They cannot vote. They cannot register for selective service. If you're under 18, you cannot donate blood or be an organ donor. You can't draft your own will. You can't buy a lottery ticket. Many times you can't drive late at night, and you may not be able to have any other people in your car. You cannot go to, you can't get a savings and checking account, and there are many other things. And while we value the student members of the school, this student member of the Baltimore County School Board, many of them are 16 or 17 years old when they serve. They may turn 18, but they are not 18 when they get appointed to this position. Finally, I will tell you the student member of the school board is not elected by all the students. It's a little bit of a rigged system the way it works, but it is not an open vote the way you and I are voted to a position. So for these and other reasons, I voted no, and I'm urging you to vote no on this bill.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, let's be clear, this is not establishing a student member on the board. All it's doing is saying that one thing they need to be able to vote on that they can't in Baltimore County is a capital and operating budget. I submit to you that if you're voting on policy and you can't vote on the budget to support it, frequently that's no vote on policy at all. And so these students need to be able to participate fully in the decision making that we have given them. This bill was vetoed last year, but we passed it here on the floor by a vote of 98 to 41, and it was passed in the Ways and Means Committee unanimously. And this is a bill that we support. There's no precedent being set here. There are several counties that already allow their board members to vote on capital and operating budgets. In fact, one county, Anne Arundel, quite proud of you all back there, they get full voting privileges. I believe there is precedent that that student member has actually been vice chair of the Board of Education and executed their duties really very well. And so this is not a major step, but it's an important one. I will say this about student members of the board. If you name the things they can't do, one of the justifications for vetoing this bill last year is there was a court case suggesting that these students couldn't serve because they were younger than regular voting age. Well, the court has responded that we have tremendous latitude in what we let students vote on and how we elect them to the board. We are allowed to make these decisions, and the Baltimore County delegation has voted in favor of this. So I ask you to honor local courtesy and also what's right and allow the students to have this right. Thank you.
Is there any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In Calvert County, we have, and this does have statewide implications, which is why I stood up. In Calvert County, we've had this request before. It's not a formal request, but more of a conversation. And we've always said no, because other than what the good delegate from Baltimore County mentioned, all the things that someone who is in public school can't actually vote on in the real world, the fact of the matter is that they're voting on this massive budget, and in order to be able to understand a budget like that, usually most people have degrees. It's not required that you have a degree to run for the school board, granted, but you have a degree nonetheless, many of these folks who run, to understand budgets, to understand finance. They usually own homes. They usually pay mortgages. They usually pay taxes. And what I find interesting is the chatter of individuals who actually think it's okay for a minor to be voting on a school budget of $2.6 billion when the fact of the matter is that they can be leveraged by the administrators and teachers in that system when they're in school as a minor getting graded by these very same people whose budgets you're voting on. There's an inherent conflict of interest. There's not an arm's length transaction of this student, this minor, who's subject to the public school system grading system, who's going and then voting for this budget. That's why in Calvert we haven't allowed this. And I understand, that this is local privilege, but the fact of the matter is it's a spreading thing, and it's spreading, and it is not healthy for the system, especially when we have so many students who can't even become proficient in math in the public school system. Keep them in the classroom. That's where they belong.
Baltimore Delegation Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just because you think your next door neighbor isn't qualified to be president doesn't mean that no one is qualified to be president. Sure, there are children that probably wouldn't be able to execute this job real well. There's some people in this room who don't execute their jobs here real well, but they're still here, okay? Thank you. Oh, did you think it was you I was talking about? Maybe. Okay.
Madam Speaker.
We're off the rails.
Okay, yes.
Madam
Certainly.
Speaker.
Oh, for what reason are you getting up? What reason are you getting up?
Yes, I'm getting up because the gentleman's remarks are inappropriate.
Was he directing it at somebody?
No, they were not. It was said in jest, Madam Speaker, and I'm happy to withdraw that.
Okay.
The
Are you
larger
okay
point
now?
is there were several requirements that were listed. For example, these students don't own homes. Well, probably not. But there's no requirement in Baltimore County that one of the board members own a home to become a board member. In fact, there's no degree required. There's no particular training except in this bill. We put it in. We said that students must be trained in understanding the budget before they can vote on the budget. And we suggested, we didn't make them, we probably should have, make the other board members also be trained in understanding the budget before indeed they can vote on the budget. And so this is a very important thing for board members to do. There is a lot of money involved. On the issue of influence, the Montgomery County board member last year said it best. Yes, of course I'm influenced by other members of the board, just as I influence other members of the board. That's what we do here. We actually spend time talking to our colleagues, trying to talk them into positions that we favor and out of ones we don't. Sometimes we're successful, and sometimes we're not. Finally, I submit that student members of the board actually seem to work harder than the other members of the board for one reason, and you've heard it here in this room. There's an implicit bias against them because of their age. They have to prove themselves out, and they work extra hard too, and they work extra hard on understanding the budget, and they will in the future. Again, I'm happy if another county does not want to extend this privilege. That's their decision. I don't agree with it, but I would honor their local courtesy. I hope they will honor ours as well.
Okay. Gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Allowing a student to vote on the capital budget means the child will be attending one school and voting on the resources of all of the other schools. So they will have a particular interest in the success of their own school in the neighborhood and community in which they live, but at the same time will be having to vote for monies going elsewhere. So there is a serious concern of conflict there, in my opinion, number one. And number two, in this body, we've put in several interesting bills that claim that people can't be responsible for things like murder unless they're 25 because their brains aren't developed. But they can vote on $2 billion budgets, apparently. I'll be read.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just like to clarify for the record, this bill was not unanimous out of Ways and Means. Additionally, it was not unanimous by the Board of Education. There were Board of Ed members that were opposed to this. And finally, the county council members in Baltimore County have to be 25 years old to run for county council. And this student member is getting to vote on a budget that is about half the size of the county's budget. So, I think this is the wrong direction. Again, the school board member is valuable, the student, in bringing a view to the board, but not qualified to vote on the budget. Thank you.